Chapter 15. I'm glad you told me, said Emma, squinting out towards the Atlantic rollers crashing against Chapel Rock. I'm glad you felt you could. We were at Perranporth late that cool October afternoon, a chill wind whipping in off the sea as we sat on the low perimeter wall between the car park and the promenade, and watching the tide sliding in across the sand. The sky was grey and turbulent, but the path was a slate washed clean of secrets she knew now. And through her knowing, I'd make my peace with Nicky. Thanks, Chris. She laid her hand on mine. It means a lot to me. It isn't a pretty story, I reflected, as much to myself as to her. The station car park at St. Earth, the muddy rides of Bishop Woods, the manicured gardens at Penmount Crematorium. We'd visit them all in the last few hours as I set out for her the dismal facts of her family's tragedy. But you had a right to hear it, and she heard it all. I'd make sure of the hat. Her father's innocence and my father's guilt were clear between us. There was nothing left to hide. Now you know the truth, Emma. What you do with it is up to you. What do you expect me to do? I don't know. You'd probably have grown up the pampered daughter of rich and doting parents, but for us Napiers, we cheated you and Nicky, and we helped Tully murder your father. We've got a lot to answer for. None of it was your fault, but I gained by it. Gran was trying to look after the interests of the next generation, however misguidedly. I was part of her excuse. What she did for her own reasons. If she was still alive, I'd want to make her suffer, I admit that. Tully too, especially Tully. But they're both dead. It's too late to go looking for revenge. Your father and brother-in-law are guilty of doing away with a man I'd have to be killed myself in the same circumstance. Am I supposed to hate them for that? You could hate them for stealing your inheritance. We're talking about millions of pounds, Emma. Are we? Well, if the life I've led has taught me anything, it's that there are some things more important than money. Even so, it's rightfully yours. But to get it, I'll have to persuade the courts to pardon my father, and they're not going to, are they? There's too much for them to untangle and too much embarrassment waiting for them if they try. Thanks all the same, Chris, but I think I'll pass on that. Maybe there's an easier way. How do you work that out? It came to me while I was waiting for you at St. Earth. I mean, it lets everyone's off lightly, I realise, but what? She turned to look at me. My father's 76 years old. He can't live forever. I imagine I'd inherit rather a lot of money when he dies. So, you'll be welcome to it, every penny. What? I don't want it. I'm not sure I ever did, really. And now I know I'm not entitled to it. Well, why shouldn't you have it? You're crazy. We could have a legal document drawn up, transferring title to any bequests I receive from him to you, if that would set your mind at rest. My mind doesn't need setting at rest. She stared at me incredulously, almost angrily. You said you don't want the money. Well, frankly, I'm pretty sure that you think I want it. I want it either. But it belongs to you. I'll say this just once, Chris. I don't want it. Her anger softened. She looked up to see. Do you know something? I never been to Cornwall before in my life. I've never dared to. I'm glad you forced me into it. It's where you should have been born. That's what Nicky used to say. He promised to bring me down here for a holiday when I left school, to show me all the places he remembered from his childhood. I think he hoped he could move down here together when I was too old for Considine to stop me. But by then, she shrugged. We could have stayed with Auntie Ethel at Nanswerthal to start with, I suppose. It might have worked out. You still could, I ventured. She'll be overjoyed to discover. I was cut off by the gentle pressure of Emma's fingers against my lips. Don't say it, she murmured. It's too soon for that. Her hand fell away. You could still come here for holidays. Stay somewhere like this. I'll pay. We're back to money again. Only because I have some and you don't. I like to show you Cornwall, like Nicky wanted to, I suppose. It's something I could do for both of you. She looked at me thoughtfully before she said, It's certainly tempting. It's quiet down here in autumn and beautiful too. I am owed a week off. Take it then. When? After the inquest? She frowned. You're giving evidence at that, aren't you? Yes. Don't say anything about all of this, will you? I mean, if the idea crossed your mind of bringing it into the open, I wouldn't want you to. It's simply not worth it. Besides, no one would believe you. No, I concluded ruefully. I don't suppose they would. What will you say to your father? Nothing. I don't want to hear his explanation and evasions. He had a chance to tell me the truth himself, but he chose to lie instead. As far as I'm concerned, that's pretty well finished it between us. Our eyes met and she shrugged off apologetically. Sorry, don't be. I'm not really. Well, not as sorry as I'd be if you didn't let me treat you to a holiday as soon as the inquest behind us. What do you say? Maybe, was what Emma eventually said halfway back up to the A303 to London that evening. I had to settle for a definite yes to Sunday lunch in Pangbourne the following weekend and the promise that she'd make up her mind about Cornwall by then. I'd happily have driven her all the way to Battersea, but she insisted on finishing the journey by train. Her reluctance to accept help was easily explicable in psychological terms. She'd been taught from an early age that gifts comes with strings attached, strings that could cut as well as bind. But it also lent an air of mystery I was beginning to find attractive. I'd done what she asked of me out of a sense of obligation to Nicky, and now she asked no more of me. The end of our strangely precarious relationship was in sight, but I didn't want it to arrive. As for the truth about her father, entangled as it was with the truth in mine, like her, I could see no alternative but to let it lie. Dad would be wondering if I'd honour my pledge to him. I'm not going to give up. For the moment, I was content to let him go, wondering. Eventually, he'd conclude he'd read me right after all, but one day I promised myself he would have a rude awakening. All of this, of course, I assumed I was free to decide what was or wasn't revealed, but there was a dangerous assumption, as Emma pointed out to me after lunch on Sunday, when I took her for a drive and showed her what was left of the workshop. You still have no idea who Pauline Lucas is? None, or what she wants. Not a clue. I thought she was involved with Tully. You see, it didn't make a lot of sense, but nothing else seemed to fit now. I just don't know. I grinned perversely. I think that's why I need a holiday. Emma grinned back at me. She gave no other hint of her intention until we returned to Harold Croft. She asked if I'd salvaged anything from the wreckage of the workshop, and I pointed to a box load of tools, some of them still fire blackened, standing in the garage. This is all that was left, she asked, stooping to take a look. All that was serviceable. She did a thorough job, didn't she? I'm afraid so. Then I think you're right. She straightened up my smile. You do need a holiday. How about Cornwall at the end of the month? And so it was settled. She'd take the week off the inquest off and find a small hotel or guest house or staying somewhere a safe distance from Truro. I'd stay at Tredora House and spend the days with her exploring the Land's End and Lizard areas. It would be her first real break from London in years, and it was clear the prospect excited her. Try as she might to disguise the fact, it decided me to. For a jumble of reasons I wasn't ready to analyse. Her life in the shadows had left her so unsure of herself that she seemed younger than she really was, innocent and vulnerable in need, as I saw it, of brotherly protection. Only I wasn't her brother, and I didn't aspire to be, but I didn't want her to walk out of my life either. It was possible. I was soon to be reminded that I needed protection more than Emma did. I'd hardly stepped indoors that evening after driving her into Reading to catch a train when the phone rang and I found myself talking to the woman who seemed to have decided to become my tormentor. Pauline Lucas, here, Mr. Napier. I got your message. What message? The one you left with Frankie at the Senate Club. I gather you've been looking for me. Does that surprise you? Nothing you do surprises me. What do you want? To me. That's what you said last time. I mean it. Interested? Do I have a choice? Of course, but if you want to speak to me face to face, go to Baker Street Tube Station at 5 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. Wait on the westbound platform on the Circle line. Stand by the fire extinguisher cupboard halfway along. Hold on, why? If you're not in that exact position at the exact time, you won't see me. She paused for a second before adding, but if you are, you will. Then she put down the telephone. Baker Street at the start of a Monday evening rush hour was a crowded warren of stairs and platform. The convergence of 4 different underground lines produced a bewildering tangle of interconnecting passageways. I stood where I'd been told to, watching the trains as they rattled in and out, scanning the jumbled faces of the commuters as they surged on or off, and glancing up at the footbridge linking the westbound and eastbound platforms. I waited patiently, knowing Pauline Lucas would keep her word in her own way, and wondering what they would be, aware of the people coming and going around me and the minutes till 5 o'clock, steadily ticking away. I'd arrived early, naturally, but she just as naturally hadn't. A train pulled in just before 5 and pulled out again, leaving me momentarily alone, though almost immediately more passengers started flooding down the stairs to join me. I looked up at the clock and saw it register the hour. Where are you? Where are you? I murmured under my breath. I looked further along towards the footbridge and the tunnel mouth beyond, and let my gaze track back around the eastbound platform. And there she was, exactly opposite me, smiling faintly and cocking her head. As our eyes met, she was wearing a pale raincoat and looked like any other working woman returning home from the office, except there was no trace of the end-of-day dishevelment most of the commuters around her displayed. "Hello, Mr. Napier," she said. Her voice came across the gap between us. "Nice to see you again." "Is this what you meant by face-to-face?" I complained. On most underground stations I have been looking at a concave wall full of advertisements. Here the platforms face each other, and she could speak to me, secure in the knowledge that she was out of my reach. Behind her was a cut-through to the rest of the station. If I tried to cross the bridge to her side, she'd have time to slip away from the crowds to one of the other lines. She could dictate our parting as well as our meeting. "I'm here, aren't I? You can see me, and I'm listening." So were several people around us, roused from their evening standards by the strangeness of the spectacle. "Don't you have anything to say to me? I'd like an explanation of your family's recent misfortunes. Why would you think you're entitled to one? After all, they were scarcely undeserved, were they?" "What do you mean by that?" "You know what I mean. You just can't bring yourself to admit it. Does this have something to do with Nicky?" "Who's Nicky? A friend of yours?" "He was, yes." "Why the past tense?" "Because he's dead." "Really? How did he die?" "I think you know." "Tell me anyway." "He killed himself." "Did he?" She glanced down the line, hearing as I could the approach of an eastbound train. Then she looked across at me again. "Perhaps you should take better care of your friends, Mr. Napier." "Who are you?" But the train arrived before she could answer. Even supposing she meant to, the doors hissed open, and my view of her became a chaos of milling figures. I dodged back and forth, trying and failing to catch a glimpse of her. When the train moved out, I saw her again, still standing in the same place. "How does it feel?" she asked, as soon as it was quiet enough to be heard. "To suffer and yet not to know why." "How do you think?" "I work hard to make something of my business, just like your sister worked hard to make something of her marriage, and your parents to make something of their home." She nodded. "Oh, I believe you. I wanted each of you to miss what I took away." "Why do you hate my family?" "I don't. Not anymore. It's over." "You haven't suffered enough, but then you couldn't, could you?" "That wouldn't be possible without." To my astonishment, her voice faltered, and she looked suddenly distressed. She raised a hand to her forehead. A man standing a few yards away stared at her in evident puzzlement. The calm reasserted itself. "Don't worry, Mr. Napier. I don't propose to turn the villains into victims." Her voice was back under control. "This is goodbye. You won't hear from me again." "Who are you?" I repeated. "A friend of a friend, you might say. And in the final analysis, not a much better one than you." With that, she turned and headed down the cut-through towards the Metropolitan line, moving slowly as if tempting me to follow. I knew the layout of the station was against me, and so did she, but I couldn't just watch her walk away. I started running along the platform, up over the footbridge and down the steps towards the other end of the cut-through. There was no immediate sign of her, though one dark-haired raincoat figure among so many was easy enough to miss. I reached the Metropolitan line platform and moved as fast as I could through the crowds to stop to the top of the stairs leading down to the Bakerloo and Jubilee lines. And there I stopped, recognizing the futility of what I was doing. I could blunder on it in random pursuit, but I stood no realistic chance of catching her. She could have taken any one of the half a dozen different routes. It was as if she wanted me to understand her mastery of the situation, and so I did, but still there was a chance. However slim, I could guess right, or I could see through the deception. The least likely course was probably the one she followed. Trusting the hunch, I doubled back towards the Circle line, sighting an eastbound train standing at the platform as I neared the footbridge. I ran towards it, but I read the doors had closed and it was pulling out. And there, strapped hanging calmly in the second carriage to me, was Pauline Lucas. She smiled as she caught sight of me and raised one hand in ironic farewell. Then she was past me and gone. The train accelerated away into the tunnel until only the fading rumble of the engine and the dwindling sparks of static on the track could be heard. Silence descended in the stale air. As fast as it was brief, I stared on into the black mouth of the tunnel, but I saw nothing. Frankie's story, painfully extracted over 3 exorbitantly priced mineral waters at the bar of the Senate Club, was that he had ace promise asked around about the woman I knew as Pauline Lucas without success. Nobody knew nothing, mate. Or if they did, they weren't telling. Then how do you account for her knowing about our arrangement? Word must have got back to her. Can't say I'm surprised. She looked like one of the sisterhood. What sisterhood? The high class hookers who bring their clients here for an appetizer. They don't all patrol King's Cross in fishnet stockings and miniskirts, do they? There's a smarter set for your more discerning customers. We get quite a few of them in. They tend to stick together. Know what I mean? So you think she's a prostitute? Well, from what I remember the picture you showed me, she's no nursery school teacher. He grinned. Unless that's a day job. Thanks for nothing. No problem. But here, before you go, he leaned confidently across the bar in a gust of spearmint. Why are you so desperate to find her? When it comes to special services, there's always someone else. He winked. I could give you a personal recommendation. Who was she? A friend of a friend? By her own description, which surely had to mean a friend of Nicky. But nobody who'd known him had mentioned anyone who fitted her description. The consensus was that Nicky had precious few friends of either sex, and Pauline Lucas seemed a singularly unlikely acquaintance for an emotionally insecure librarian in Clacton. But perhaps his C&D days held the key. Perhaps they met on an Aldermaston march. Hadn't Constantine said something about a girl involving him in the campaign in the first place? Yet that would imply she was about the same age as Nicky and me, whereas I'd have put her as a good 10 years younger. Whichever way I turned, there was no obvious answer. Next morning I was breakfasting late, the dismal prerogative of the unemployed, wondering how or if I could find out about more recent friendships Nicky might have struck up, when a possible method presented itself literally at my door. I thought it was a postman when I went to answer the bell. Instead, I found Neville Constantine standing outside in a shabby raincoat, smiling foxily as if relishing the unpleasant surprise his visit represented. Good morning, Mr. Napier. I've just walked around from Grayson Motors. They told me I might find you here. I gather there's been a fire at your workshop. Most distressing for you, I'm sure. What can I do for you? Could you spare me a few moments of your time? I suppose so. You better come in. I walked back to the kitchen and reluctantly offered him tea, about which I had little choice since a fresh pot was standing conspicuously on the table. He accepted, and I was aware of him eyeing me as I poured a cup and handed it to him. I had the impression he knew what I really thought of him, and I could almost believe he knew why I could afford to disclose my opinion. What brings you here, Mr. Constantine? I'm thinking of trading in my car. You remember the Fiat? I remember it. I need something more reliable, it occurs to me, since you're in trade, so to speak. The only car I have for sale is a Bentley Continental. You probably saw it at the showroom. I did, yes. Very classy. But probably out of your price bracket. I doubt I can help you, but maybe you can help me. How so? You once mentioned a girl who you blamed for introducing Nicky to the Ban the Bomb campaign. Yes, Gilligan Hendry. She was a bad influence on him. How old would she be now? Goodness, Mr. Napier, what a question. Let me see. He drank from his cup with an audible slur. She was a few years younger than Nicholas. 40, I suppose. No younger than that? Not much. Why? Could this be her? I took the photograph from the pocket of my jacket, which was hanging behind the door, and handed it to him. He glanced down at it, and the glance became a stare. For a fraction of a second, no more, it seemed clear. He recognized the woman, but he said nothing. Well, could it? No, he cleared his throat. Definitely not. Some other friend of Nicky's then. I don't think so. He handed the photograph back and looked straight at me. I'm not acquainted with this woman. Are you sure about that? Certainly. He's gulped down some more tea. When was the picture taken, might I ask? Why should you want to know if it's the picture of a total stranger? A mere curiosity. He flashed up one of his leering grins. After all, it's scarcely an everyday snapshot, is it? It was taken quite recently. And have you met the woman? Yes, as a matter of fact, I believe her to have been responsible for the destruction of my workshop. Really? But you don't know her name? Not her real one, no. It's a pity I can't help you. The man she's with is my brother-in-law. The photograph led to the breakup of his marriage. There's been an attack on my parents' house as well. It seems awfully like a vendetta, which is why it occurred to me that there might be a connection with Nicky. If there is, I'm unaware of it. I'm sorry to hear your family's difficulties, Mr. Napier. Really, I am. And I'm even sorry I have to add to them. But he drains his cup and set it down on the table. Needs must. Whose needs are those? Mine. They amount to rather more than a new car, I'm afraid. That's why I've caught on you. I've never had the pleasure of meeting your father, but I gather he's a man of considerable substance, not to say great wealth. I'm wondering if you might feel able to make certain representations to him on my behalf. What kind of representations? The financial kind. He took a few steps to the window and gazed out into the garden, slapping one hand thoughtfully against the other behind his back in perfect time with the dripping of the tap in the sink beside him. It seemed he was about to ask me to negotiate a loan of some kind, but the idea was so preposterous I knew something else was coming. He turned and gave me a tight-lipped smile. I require £1,000,000, Mr. Napier. You what? 1,000,000 to be paid into a specific bank account, of which I will supply the details. I require 10% by the end of this week as a deposit, so to speak, and the balance within another week. Adequate notice, I think, for your father to liquidate sufficient assets. What the hell are you talking about? Failure to comply will oblige me to notify the authorities of the matter which Edmund Tully met his death 12 years ago, and the reason for his murder. I have the letters Tully left at his lodgings in Interiors in August 1947, and I have from your brother-in-law an estimate of where in Bishop's Wood his body is to be found. I also have a next of kin to Michael Lanyon's widow, a legally substantial right to the entire estate of the late Joshua Connorworth. Hence, I think you will agree and be able to persuade your father to agree that the sum I seek in settlement is entirely reasonable. Thank you for listening.